I didn't give Harumafuji much of a platform last year, but his role in sumo history dictates that he deserves to have his say. His memoir, Body and Soul, was released quite recently and, needless to say, contains interesting anecdotes about his career, including his version of the Takanuewa incident. I'd like to begin by translating the introduction for you. Here, Harumafuji talks about the changes required to bridge the chasmic gap between Ozeki and Yokozuna. The falling leaf is not yet done. Aim for Yokozuna. From now on, sure as the air gets colder when day turns to night, harsher challenges would be thrust upon me. Nonetheless, I left my coach's room resolved to secure the Yokozuna's white belt. I went into the September 2010 tournament as a 26-year-old Ozeki. On the 13th day, I secured my prized 8th win against Koto Oshu and preserved my rank for at least another 2 tournaments. But on the final weekend, I fell to both Baruto and Hakuho. The final match saw lone Yokozuna Hakuho extend his winning run to 62 bouts and win a 4th consecutive Emperor's Cup unbeaten. I, on the other hand, had posted 8 wins, 7 losses. The contents of my sumo were found wanting too, and that really grated upon me. With great difficulty did I give my post-tournament message of thanks to my stablemaster. Courtesy of your support, I achieved a winning score. Coach Isegahama is a man of few words, but he seemed unusually keen to prolong conversation that night. And what do you think of your result? I'm embarrassed, I answered. Coach responded. Recently, all you seem to be saying is, "Oh, I've realized my dream, I've realized my ambition." But if you really believe that, then this is where it all ends. The downward slope is over there. Start walking on it. That's all you've got to look forward to. You won't be rising any higher. You see, only when he aims for Yokozuna does an Ozeki start to look the real deal. Well, how the scales fell from my eyes. I had yearned for Ozeki because I thought it looked cool. But I never said anything about Yokozuna. Why? Because it was just a totally different level. So far beyond where I was. Until that point, I'd been content with Ozeki. But my coach's words made me realize that my sights were set too low. Redefining the goal was one thing. Working out what I had to do to get there was quite another. I knew that I needed to tone up my torso off the dohyo as well as on it. That's when the person inside me finally surfaced. A few weeks before that September tournament, I'd gotten a call from a Mongolian friend who said, "A leading Mongolian powerlifter's coming over to Japan for an international competition. He wants to meet you and take a photo together, that kind of thing. So do you think you can meet up with him?" As it was outside tournament season, and the two of us could enjoy talking about our hometowns, I agreed. So I linked up with the powerlifter, went to a restaurant, and while we were dining, he suddenly asked me how much I weighed, followed by how many kilos could I bench press. Well, I told him quite matter-of-factly that I weighed 123 kilos, and that although I'd never actually tried bench pressing, I could probably do about 80. "Then how the hell did you make Ozeki?" came his shocked reply. "Dope yourself up or something?" Inwardly offended, I informed him that I was not involved in doping, and with a laugh, added that if it was a choice between alcohol and doping, alcohol would win every time. "And besides," I concluded, "I do 3 times as much training as everybody else. I love training, and that's why I succeed." but he was unconvinced. "Look," he countered. "I only weigh 78 kilos, but I can bench press over 3 times what you can." He then checked the firmness of my knees. "An Ozeki should be doing full-on weight training," he explained. "Do that, and you should make Yokozuna pretty soon. You'll also be able to bench press 300 kilos. I'll teach you. Make the necessary changes to your body, and you'll end up physically bigger and more powerful." You could really feel his enthusiasm. He was so eloquent that I wondered where on earth he learned to talk like that. And at the time, I had no idea how central he would be to my future development. Fate does work in mysterious ways. I reflected on what he had said at table, and while being driven back to my apartment that night, called him to enlist his services. I told him I'd arrange everything from his visa to his travel expenses. Hell, I'd even be his guarantor. Would he come to Japan 6 times a year, 2 weeks prior to each tournament, and train me? I think he couldn't say no. That's what I needed to do to challenge for Yokozuna. I started by making a plan and a regime to stick to. Until then, my daily schedule had consisted of morning training, lunch, sleep, and then going out with friends or supporters in the evening. And although sumo training sessions lasted from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m., when I broke it all down, I found I was only training intensely for a solitary hour. Thus, in a 24-hour day, I was only spending 1 hour properly fighting for my own development. And there I was, patting myself on the back for being an Ozeki. So, I tried upping my intense training from 1 hour to 2. I had to put myself in a more difficult environment. And in the afternoon, I would do an extra workout at the gym. Then, in the run-up to each tournament, I would move out of my apartment and into the stable to focus. And my motivation grew at every step. Depending on the angle from which you look at it, any object gleaming in the light can seem attractive. I guess the light beaming upon Yokozuna is especially bright, but the shadow cast is decidedly dark. If I become Yokozuna, I can do so much more with my life than I can now, was what I told myself, and my imagination became more vivid accordingly. Deciding upon your goal is like searching for a tiny pearl among several tons of rice. When you finally find it, it's like cool water to a parched throat. I was 26 when I found mine, and the commencement of my Yokozuna promotion quest finally brought home the meaning of these words that I'd heard so often. When pursuing your dream, waking up every morning is the happiest feeling. Oh, the happiness of waking up and being able to think, right, I'm going to keep striving for that goal today. Every day spent in pursuit of that became fun. Between the September and November tournaments of 2010, I got my new Mongolian trainer over to instruct me. In Tokyo, we used the legendary Endo's gym, which I had been using since my 3rd division days, and received fine support from the owner, Mitsuo Endo. I had come to realize that muscle training was just as important as sumo training. And it's so true that you never fully understand something until you do it yourself and put your own body through it. The more I put my body through, the more I learned that on the morning after a dinner with alcohol, I performed worse in both bench pressing and squats. Experience taught that alcohol was no good for me, tiring my body, blunting my senses. My flesh and spirit had begun to understand one another. From that point on, I was taking more care of myself. Well, that's how Harumafuji's book begins, and I'll aim to bring you various excerpts from it in due course. How about we go to the Takanoiwa incident next? Stay tuned.